One last video about no, there's another video that's gonna happen after this, and then I have to make two videos discussing the allocation of initial responsibilities when it comes to my consulting job, in order for me to understand like out loud what are the things that I'm thinking of, because instinctively or like through my planning, I wanted to understand a bit more about why I would want to do some stuff. And how would I prepare for a business analysis course, given full well that what I'm doing right now as a contract is business analysis? That's a legitimate thing to talk about. Though what I want to talk about right now is The Sound of Silence. I'm sure all of you know that song, right? Uh, man, my favorite version of it is by Disturbed, but I forgot who the two people that actually like sing this song. But have you ever considered what it truly meant, the sound of silence? So I'm gonna Google something and I'm gonna be back in 2 seconds. So I was right. It was Debussy, Claude Debussy, and basically his quote is, "Music is the space between the notes." So yesterday I was sitting with somebody and we were having a discussion about how people compose. And I'm not a composer and I'm learning how to play guitar, but naturally I figured I had to learn music first before I start thinking about like which instrument I want to use. And even though like my choice was a string instrument, right now I'm thinking as well I want to get a harmonica. And my rationale is just because a harmonica is like 1 to 12 and you kind of like switch the octaves. It's not as complicated. So I can actually follow my up downs in order for me to be able to apply them to the guitar. I mean, that's basically my logic for now. But he speaks about music in a very beautiful way, and he says it's the distance between the notes, which made me kind of like, which made when I said that to my friend, it exploded in my head in a much different way than it used to before. I was high on life, but basically, the way I explained it is the sounds that we hear are basically positions that only make sense with the distance between them. So I explained it in my head and I wrote it down naturally because I didn't want it to like slip away. And it's basically any song you listen to, any tune, any melody you kind of like get attracted to, kind of is a flow of different positions where it's taking you and placing you in them. So if you think of if you've ever considered music, it's like from you start at second zero and you end at like some minute. And from the beginning to the end, it's just a series of notes. And the emptiness in between them is basically you jumping on the whole song from a position's perspective and then leaving the song. But all in all, together, they kind of harmonize the times you leave a position, a certain position, and the time you come back. And so I'm using the word position on purpose because every note has a certain position on an instrument. Every note has a certain position in your ear. And even so, like, your mind is actually taking it and kind of like conjuring an explanation of the sound. And as it's processing the song, because some songs are super fucking simple, you can like listen to them and then the tune gets stuck in your head. Why? Because it's a catchy tune, it's simple, and the positions are kind of relevant to you. They're easy to understand. But there are songs that are very intricate where you listen to them once and you kind of like, whoa, there's just like a lot of backs, a lot of different notes, a lot of different sounds, a lot of different techniques, a lot of different instruments, a lot of different band players, and each one has their own style. Just funny because uh, the word symphony is basically a Greek word, symphonia. And what it means is basically being able to like move together, right? And I think the origin of the actual word is just two people being in a two people being able to kind of like engage or something like this. I should research that more in order for me. But don't worry about it. I'll probably like make a video of it in the future. And one of my friends told me that the ones that I actually like haven't seen in a while. So so actual symphony means this the whole coherence of all the sounds together to create this kind of like storyline, whatever it makes us feel. Because we all like when I say a good song, everyone thinks of their own good song. Everyone relates to them differently. And it's funny because the more I started thinking about it, the more I started realizing like it's these positions that you basically take in a song, these positions that kind of like elevate your spirit, bring you down, all this back and forth between emptiness and a different position, and then back to emptiness. It's the same emptiness. It's the same silence. Silence is you can't. There's silence and there's white noise, which is basically you're hearing everything, but it becomes monotonous in your head. And there's brown noise and black noise and green noise and blue noise and all the other noises, whatever. But silence is the only thing that's standardized that all of us could understand. Like when there's silence. And every single note is probably going to be heard differently by other people. And so every song is kind of like shifting you between the silence, between the emptiness of, towards the emptiness between the notes. And then it's taking you to the silence, the emptiness, and then it's bringing you back to a different position, like a different note, a higher note, a lower note, a longer note, a shorter note, a series of notes. And this silence basically sometimes is extended, it's shortened, it's kind of like, I don't know, embellished. I think that's a word they use. But the silence is the one thing that's consistent. And after I kind of processed the whole how a song plays in your head, jumping from like higher tunes, higher notes to lower notes, and it kind of like forms some form of like chartish kind of thing as it levels up until finally it ends. I got to think about how we kind of like apply the same, the back to the emptiness and then back to the notes and our day-to-day lives, or how we apply them to our patterns, specifically the goals. Because if you look at your life and if you look at it as a more like mellow lifestyle, you can probably articulate it in a more like an easier song to be explained. Whilst if you look at your life as a more haphazard, like the difference between somebody living on an island versus somebody living in a city, right? You'd imagine there are a lot of events that are happening in the city that kind of like would affect your life. Whilst on an island, it's kind of like more every once in a while something happens, and that would basically be the notes, and everything in between is the emptiness. And as I thought about it more, it became a bit philosophical in the whole sense of we do most of our living in between the events slash goals that we kind of like have in our lives. But in a weird way, the only thing that kind of makes them whole is actually those points in our life. Like if you're working, for example, a friend of mine recently got married. Took her 3 months to plan the wedding, and the wedding night happened in 8 hours. Literally, we went there by 6:30, and we were done by 2. And for her, yay, I'm married. But the true wedding happened in the 3 months preparing for it. And I started imagining, because that technically is the emptiness where we get to live, where we get to like anticipate the next notes, anticipate the next, how's it going to sound? Is it going to take us up, take us down? Is it going to give us a different vibe or not? And I felt it personally, specifically, not the wedding part, but because we're in October right now. We're in October right now. And October 15th, I'm basically starting a new degree or starting a new certificate, my bad. And from here to there, everything has to change so that everything after that degree makes sense. And so I already have a note that's going to be played in 15 days. But that note seems to be a heavy note. But from now to these 15 days, I have to play a lot of smaller notes. So in the emptiness of the bigger notes, in the in between of the bigger notes, of the bigger events of my life, there are smaller events that are kind of like having their own unique emptiness. And the more you kind of like dissect it, the more you realize that your day is actually everything you do from one thing to another, where your day actually is. Because ultimately, when you reach the other thing, it's either one thing is finishing or another thing is starting. And so I wanted to just put it out there the way I thought of it and the way I looked at how we truly only live in between these events. Because when these events happening, all we're doing is just kind of like absorbing it in. We're no longer the ones that are actually doing anything. We're just, when these events happen, we're just letting them come to us. But until they happen, we're doing all the work. And that's where I think truly is the space where we actually get to live. And how we handle that space is how our life is and how our lifestyle is. Huh. How we handle our space, the space between. That's the title. Thank you.